Hey everybody, welcome back. And if you are new to the channel, I'm going to extend a hearty welcome to you as well. We try to always aim towards objectivity and just truth, a little bit of logic as much as we can, and trying to bring a dose of sanity back to the conversation when it comes to things that are going on these days. So I'm going to dive into today's topic, which is something I've been thinking about kind of expanding on for a while, but because I've given bits and pieces of my story over time about when I was married before, the alimony fraud that I went through, and a lot of the things that I experienced that I hope could give incentive to people to be able to avoid some of those traps. And today I'm going to touch a little bit on how I really became red pill in the first place, which I guess for the most part you would consider me that. You would consider me somebody who's a bit more red pill, MGTOW, and really kind of paying attention to everything. But I prefer to think of myself as I stated at the beginning of the video, somebody who approaches this with more logic, reason, sanity, and just trying to have objectivity about all of this because much of how I arrived where I'm at is just by witnessing the insanity that's going on, the lack of honesty and trust in our legal system and what's going on out there, and coming to the conclusion that most everything that we're dealing with is a giant version of a psyop that's designed to bring out the worst nature in ourselves that we all possess to some degree, and it's designed to bring that out and kind of promote that to the front in an attempt to dismantle a lot of things that we hold dear. I know some of you will probably look at that and say, well, Steve, that just sounds incredibly conspiratorial. That's really, really questionable. Bear with me and listen in, if not just for the sake of a good story. My red pill journey started actually a very long time ago before there was ever even a red pill concept. Nobody was saying the term red pill. Nobody was referring it to that way outside of the Matrix movies. Nobody had any idea what that was even about. And throughout the course of my marriage, my ex got addicted to online validation from a lot of other men. I was spending a huge amount of time working, trying to fund everything and trying to take care of everything. We did have children together. And over the course of time, I began to realize that things had become so distant between her and I that I eventually, some of you may or may not agree with this, but this was something that seemed necessary to me and was recommended by other people at the time, that I began to ask hard questions that I knew the answers to just to see what level of honesty I was even dealing with this person, whether this was even salvageable. And every single test was failed phenomenally, leading me to the ultimate conclusion that I was dealing with an individual who ultimately was going to step out on me in many more ways than one, was determined to go that direction. And I had to come to the conclusion of either at some point she's going to pull the trigger on me and end things and completely swamp me in a really bad way. Not that the way that I had to go through wasn't particularly bad as it was. I'll explain that as we go. Or I could pull the trigger, which I ultimately decided to do. I had some fear and trepidation about it because my father had worked as a psychologist over the years, and I had seen what had happened to families that went through divorces and the children, what happened to them. And I would think about what was going to happen to my kids, causing me many sleepless nights and a lot of concern, really. We got to the point where we were going through the actual divorce. A lot of things were getting exposed. And that was where I started to really have my first red pill moments, where I began to realize that as I hired attorneys and began to work with them to dismantle things, that my ex was committing alimony fraud. We caught her doing that, but the judge was extremely hesitant to do anything about it at first. And my attorney knew that that was going to happen and instructed me in advance. We had to get a private investigator involved to get all the facts to light that were going to be necessary for the court, because they wouldn't just take my word for it. I know people have said we don't believe that, but that is what it is. I hope to God you never have to find out for yourself that I'm right about this, because I experienced it. I actually sat in courtrooms where there were times where they would have a lot of cases playing out in front of each other, and I saw prenuptial agreements thrown out like they were nothing. I saw people in in particular women in many cases, but in some cases men too, where people were just lying to the court, but in particular, whoever it was that was on the receiving end, that it would be beneficial for the court to have as much money flowing through as possible. If they were lying and they were on the receiving end, there was pretty much no accountability. There was no penalty for having done so. And they still made out pretty well, leaving with a lot of cash and prizes, as the old saying goes. They still made out very well financially. And I watched this happen over and over again. And over the course of years, began to make it a point to ask other attorneys that I encountered and met through this situation, has this been your experience too? Is this true, or is this just relative to me? Is this just my bad luck? Only to discover that this was happening across the board all over the place. Just all over the place. In fact, many of them were saying, whatever you do, do not get legally married. As a man, as a young man, especially if, with any money coming in or doing well for yourself, do not legally get married again unless you just hate life. Don't do it. And that's a rather sobering thing to have an attorney who does this all the time and this is their living tell you to your face. That the system is so lost, the only way to protect yourself is to make sure you are not at their mercy. So I've been attempting to spread that message to everybody because I know for a fact that it is not a fluke or a rare thing that I experience this. And for those of you young men that are out there considering getting legally married to somebody, I highly encourage you to avoid that. In fact, I would flat out tell you do not do that. If you value your own life and happiness and any peace whatsoever, find another way. Or if you really want to be around that person, date them and set things up. As long as you're not in a place where there's common law marriage, avoid anything that's going to get the government or the legal system involved in that, because they will misuse that and they will subsidize the breakup of that situation. As I moved further along past all of that and got into the dating scene, God help me, began to discover what hookup culture was. Because, I mean, to me, I remember the first times I started to notice a lot of that and realized, wow, everybody's just sleeping around and hedonism is just everywhere. And it seems like the worship of self and self-centeredness is just so prevalent that nobody thinks about anybody anymore. Am I just imagining this, or is this a real thing? And then I come to find out over time as I began to stumble across some of the first red pill videos that were coming out, because at this point, slowly but surely, people were becoming aware that this is happening and beginning to talk about it. And, of course, as the internet becomes more widespread, YouTube becomes more widespread, and people are openly talking about things, this starts to come out into the open. Throughout the course of the dating scenes, I thankfully dodged some bullets, but very nearly got hit, I have to admit, and had to learn the hard way. I dated one individual who, let me just put it to you this way. The level of false accusations to reputation destruction to everything that was engaged in, all the way down to uh, I essentially had to get another attorney involved just to get them to cease and desist, because apparently attacking somebody over the internet across state lines is a felony, according to the attorney I was working with at the time. So after sending information her way saying, hey, guess what? This is what's coming your way, and you're going to be in trouble if you don't back this off. She finally did. And we had enough evidence to prove that what she was doing, basically what was happening was she was opening fake social media accounts that didn't hardly have, they were basically brand new, and using them to send, whatever private messages, any emails, whatever she could to people in my life that she had never even actually met, in an attempt to slander and do reputation destruction. I've heard this covered by other people, that this is a primary tactic of people that are narcissists, particularly female narcissists. This is a major way that they come after people, is through reputation destruction. So I began to learn about that because I was seeing some of the stuff that was described in videos and looking at it going, oh my gosh, I am living through this. This is happening to me right now. Finally got through that, got her to finally back off and leave me alone. And I began to realize I need to be really, really careful. I need to be watching for a lot more red flags. I thought I was fairly decent at spotting them, but it turns out that I wasn't. And you have to keep in mind, this whole thing's a learning process. As you're learning parts of this, you are implementing it as much as you can, realistically as you can, while you're learning it, as you're beginning to figure out, oh, wow, that's not just some cute little fluke. That's a red flag. Or if they're being a chameleon in this area and you can't get any answers about it, that's a red flag. If you're encountering somebody who, and this actually happened to me, where you come to find out they've had a lot of plastic surgery and augmentation done, and you take a look at the reality of what their financial situation is, and you realize they don't have enough money coming in to cover all that. Who's going to cover that? Probably some sugar daddy somewhere, somebody who you don't know who they are. You don't know where their existence is in this person's life. If they're even cut completely out and you can't get straight answers, run. Anytime that you see chameleon behavior where you can't get to the bottom of what's going on, that's not a, I guess I don't have an answer, it's okay. Run. And I learned that from that situation. And then as I went along, I began to realize that I was cutting off relationships a lot faster, which is a good thing if it was something that was, showing red flags. And when I say red flags, I'm not talking about overreaching, ridiculous, and not realistic red flags. I'm talking about stuff where you know what you can live with and you know what is going to work in a relationship, especially a monogamous, honest relationship. And you know what isn't going to work. If you're just being real with yourself, you know. And if you're watching enough content out there that's actually talking about that, and as I stated at the beginning of the video, I try to be objective, be logical, be realistic. And that's why I ended up siding against a lot of what is going on these days, because let's be realistic, it is not based in that. I have seen too many debates where, in particular, somebody who's, I would say, left leaning comes in there and they can't define what a man is. They can't define what a woman is. They can't define their position. Everything seems like the goalposts are shifting and moving all over the place. They don't know who or what they are or what anybody else is. And they're hesitant to do that because they're too scared of offending anybody. And this is what our legal system and our culture is now based on, which is just utter and pure insanity. So I felt like I needed to come onto the side of being objective and realistic. And I began to realize too that most of the people that I did another video talking about covert feminism, where a lot of the women were being, to some degree, infected by the extreme selfishness, which most of what I've encountered with feminism is that it's a completely self-centered culture, in a way, a completely self-centered ideology, to the detriment, to the utter detriment of everything else. I had a few women, actually, I want to address this real quick, ask in one of the other videos that I had done, do you consider every woman that ever works or is kind of stuck in that situation to survive a feminist? That is not self-centeredness to the detriment of everybody else. That is not doing all of that and engaging in hookup culture and basically acting like monogamy, truth, honesty, and being straightforward in a relationship are things that don't matter. There's a huge difference between the two. One of them even described a woman in their family that had worked really hard to take care of an ailing grandfather and family members. That's serving people. There's nothing that I've seen from what I've encountered of feminism or other people describing of feminism that has in any way, shape, or form anything to do with actually serving people. It's all about self-serve. It's all about me. So getting back to as I was learning along the journey and realizing that I had to be very careful who I was dating, another factor kind of began to come into play about that I'd already experienced at one point, but I began to realize that when you legitimately start to pull away from relationships quicker and quicker, and women begin to realize that you were doing this for legitimate reasons. I mean, like you realize, well, they have a real problem with boundaries and monogamy. I can't move forward with this. I just can't trust it. You're not mad. You're not upset. You just realize that that's the case. They're demonstrating it to you. You're seeing it with their actions, their little hints and subtle things that they say. That they don't take that seriously. And then at some point, the chameleon part starts to show up too, where you realize they've got a whole hidden thing where you don't expect them to completely be honest about body count, but then you find out that they've slept with 50 or 60 people. And you're like, okay, I'm completely out. I mean, I was barely in this thing at all, just kind of testing the waters. And now I'm realizing I have to be completely out because uh, physical intimacy is a meaningless thing to this individual. Because if it was meaningful, we would not be having a conversation that involved 50 or 60 people or anywhere near a high number at all. So you begin to realize that, and you also begin to realize that the egos get offended of the women involved. And we have to be honest here, people. Women do not experience rejection nearly along the same lines as men do. Women are used to having much more pursuit and much different type of treatment where men pursue that. Like, I've used this analogy before. A woman could be a 3 out of 10, go into a bar and go home with somebody. A man could be a 10 out of 10, and there's still a pretty good chance it's going to be a miss, that he might not go home with anybody. And I'm not promoting hooking up. Anybody that's watched my channel, they know that I don't do that. But let's be realistic. Women are used to not feeling rejection in that way. And I began to realize I was dosing that out to quite a few different people. And it was exploding back into my face. And I really began to reflect at that point, what do I do to avoid this? So I started pulling away from the dating scene entirely and became extremely selective with how I ever interacted with women. Not in the sense that I'm trying to be judgmental towards that, but because the attitudes that I just described were so prevalent in so many places, I needed to specifically do everything I could to avoid interacting with anybody that seems like they've been wrapped up in that type of ideology, which ultimately has led me to where I am today, where I'm generally just very careful. I focus on my career a lot. I focus on spreading things, my version of kernels of truth, if they even are that, here on YouTube, for the benefit of anybody that's listening. And hopefully you can take something from it and learn from it in a way that you don't have to then experience what I've experienced to escape that trap. But also build community and camaraderie amongst people that value logic, that value reason, and that value the sanity and objectivity of what we're talking about here. So I'm not going to go on too much further. I've been kind of rattling on, it looks like, for almost 17 minutes. So as always, I value your input. Leave a comment, like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. YouTube has actually started to flag quite a few of my videos and started giving me warnings on a number of different things. I don't care. I'm just here to talk about what I feel like are topics that many cases don't get discussed, or just trying to spread what seems to be the most truthful version of what I've experienced out there. So if you like this, share it with other people that are like-minded as well. Bring them on into the community over here, and we can build something bigger, a bigger form of camaraderie, and reach more people. So I'm going to leave it there. If you want to contact me personally, you can reach out to me at stevejameschannel@gmail.com. Uh, send me an email with your personal experiences when it comes to either getting red pilled, or, just trying to learn your way when it comes to logic and reason in this insane world, or finding a way to live morally in a world that seems to be running away from that as much as it possibly can. And with that, I'm going to leave you guys there, and I hope to see you all again soon and talk to you again soon. And make sure you have a great day. Hopefully, I will make it outside again soon. It looks like I have a bunch more rain coming into the area where I live. So I tried to get out there and do a little bit of filming earlier today and at one other point. And with so much rain coming down, even if I put something up, you just hear rain coming down so hard you almost can't hear my voice. So looking forward to getting back outside again, and I will talk to you all again soon. Have a great day.